Today we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield and how the media is finally coming around. Cleveland should be 5-0. And the feud between Bob Stoops and Josh Heupel that has come to light with this really great Orlando Sentinel article. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield, Josh Heupel, and Bob Stoops. And I want to start by talking about Baker Mayfield because Mike Freeman wrote a column for Bleacher Report basically apologizing to the rest of us about how wrong he was about Baker Mayfield. Now, that wasn't the gist of the column. The gist was, hey, I didn't think that Baker Mayfield was going to be a transcendent franchise quarterback for Cleveland for all the reasons, and I was wrong about it. And Sooner fans are rightfully dunking on Mike Freeman because we saw this coming. Look, Baker showed up to our doorstep as a walk-on and went from walk-on to starting quarterback, and from starting quarterback to Heisman finalist, and from Heisman finalist to Heisman winner. Played in 2 college football playoffs and was the best football player in the country in 2017, despite what anybody thinks, went number 1 overall in the draft. But there are reasons for why folks like Mike Freeman, who gets paid to watch the NFL, and I like Mike Freeman, he writes some really great columns. His book about Jim Brown is one of my favorites, did not believe in Baker Mayfield. The first one is the height thing. Now, there is this thought that because you're short, you can't play quarterback in the NFL, and there's some folks that think you can't play quarterback at the college level. Well, number one, Kyler Murray's listed at 5'10", a lot of people 5'9". He's the best quarterback in college football today outside of Tua Tagovailoa. But you can make an argument right now that Kyler Murray's a better quarterback than Tua, even with the one loss. Kyler Murray is a video game. We all know this. And we know that Baker Mayfield at 6'1" was compared to Russell Wilson and Drew Brees as, you know, hey, we would much rather have a 6'4", 6'5" guy who can see over the offensive line and doesn't have to move to make a passing lane. But in today's NFL, where the game is much more about spacing and athleticism at the quarterback position is at a premium, you want a guy like Baker Mayfield because he'll take 2 steps to the left or right and create a throwing lane. Same thing with Kyler Murray. And if you don't want to draft a quarterback because he's short, even though he has the highest passer efficiency rating of all time in college, that's on you. Cleveland didn't feel that way, so they took Baker number 1. The next issue was laughable because it was that Baker Mayfield is too much like Johnny Manziel. Well, number one, we've been batting this down for a long time because the character of each one of those guys is just different. And the way that they came up is most important. That's where they're most different. Yes, they're both short. Yes, they were both outstanding playmakers in college. But Baker Mayfield had to earn it every single down, every step of the way. This guy didn't get big-time college football scholarship offers to play quarterback. He walked on at Texas Tech because he had to prove something. Walked on at Oklahoma because he had to prove something. Johnny Football was raised in a money environment, went to A&M, was anointed, didn't have to contend with the media, and genuinely acted like a guy who was the best player on his team. Baker's thing is to be himself, and being himself means he's brash, means he's confident, means he does not shy away from that and does not apologize for that, and it's one of the things that we've come to love about him. But the character of Baker Mayfield on a football field as a leader is not that of Johnny Football. Folks gravitate to Baker Mayfield in a really cool way. His charisma is infectious, and you're seeing that with the Cleveland Browns. The next one is just because the Browns are bad, right? Nobody expects a Browns quarterback to be good because they've had like 30 in the last 20 years, and none of them have been any good. So you just feel like a guy drafted by the Cleveland Browns is destined to fail. And then Baker Mayfield made waves by saying, if anybody can turn that franchise around, it's me. It's just the truth, man. That's what you do when you're asked the question. You give the truthful answer. Yes, the Browns were a miserable franchise, and yes, Hugh Jackson went a solid year without winning a football game. But Baker is Baker, and you're seeing Baker's overpowering the misery that you saw for the Cleveland Browns, in particular with Cleveland, because they just lost LeBron James, and now they got one in Baker Mayfield. This dude is going to do some remarkable things as the Cleveland Browns quarterback, so jump on while you still can. Because you know who jumped on early? John Dorsey. And that was the biggest reason for why I thought that everybody should have been changing their tenor right away about Baker Mayfield, is because John Dorsey's track record for picking winners is remarkable. For those of you that don't know, John Dorsey is the general manager at the Browns, but before that, he was the general manager for the Kansas City Chiefs, where he drafted Pat Mahomes, Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and genuinely put Andy Reid in the position for which he is now, which is having a shot to knock off the Patriots and cement their place as one of the best NFL teams in America with an MVP at quarterback in his first year as a starter. John Dorsey helped build that foundation, and he's doing the same at Cleveland because it's not just Baker Mayfield. It was remarkable that he picked up Denzel Ward at number 4 and knew that was the guy to get because Denzel Ward is an early and often contributor. He's also drafted Nick Chubb and Antonio Callaway. His eye for what the NFL needs and what his team needs from a personnel standpoint is amazing, and I like listening to John Dorsey talk, and that spoof that Baker Mayfield did of John Dorsey was right on target. I'm having a blast watching the Cleveland Browns play football, which is not a sentence I think anybody expected to utter as early as we're uttering it. And I never thought that I would see saying out loud that the Cleveland Browns should be 5-0, but that's the fact of the matter. Every game they played this year, even with Tyrod Taylor as the quarterback, they've been in. They haven't been blown out at all. Every game has been close, and if they get a play or they get a made field goal, hello. So this is a good football team. The defense is better than the offense, and the offense is pretty good. So I expect to read more columns like the one that Mike Freeman wrote, because Mike Freeman is a very smart guy, and he'll admit when he's wrong, which is another way of saying Colin Cowherd's going to continue his kayfabe with Baker Mayfield because it's good for ratings and it's good for ears, and he gets paid several $1 million because he's good at knowing how to rile people up and get them to tune in to what he is saying. Speaking of riling people up, wow, Josh Heupel let loose, man, didn't he? Orlando Sentinel columnist Mike Bianchi had the great and smart idea to write a column about Josh Heupel, whose UCF team is ranked ahead of Oklahoma right now, in the wake of Mike Stoops finally getting fired. Now, for those of you that don't remember, Josh Heupel was fired after the Russell Athletic Bowl, where Oklahoma got shellacked 40-6, and he and Jay Norvell was sent on their way. Now, Heupel took this hard because nobody likes to get fired, but he also took it hard because he was doing something that he didn't believe in doing, and he was still succeeding with it. So Heupel contends that he's an air raid guy. He's an air raid quarterback, played for Mike Leach and Bob Stoops, and was running the air raid when Bob told him he wanted to switch up the offense. And in switching up the offense, he also had several different quarterbacks and he had injuries, and he was running something that he didn't really believe in, and then he got fired for it. But even while he was running it, his offense was ranked number 23 in the country while the defense was ranked 51st. The offensive coordinators got fired. Bob's brother was allowed to keep his job. That is a valid criticism. But I think this runs even deeper because Heupel told Mike Bianchi that he hasn't spoken to Bob Stoops since he was fired. That's a lot of time, for which he was offensive coordinator at Utah State, offensive coordinator in Missouri, and now the head coach at Central Florida, and they're undefeated and again on a path toward mucking up the college football playoff ahead of their game with Memphis. And seeing as Heupel is undefeated as a head coach with a team that's averaging basically 49 points a game and has a guy that deserves to be in the Heisman conversation in Mackenzie Milton at quarterback, I'm inclined to think that Josh Heupel knew what he was doing as far as coaching the offense, but I was also one of the folks that was just over Josh Heupel not telling me as a fan why things weren't working or being honest about it. And I understand that coaches can only speak so much and they don't want to speak out of school, and your head coach is your head coach, and it's your job to support your head coach and not to say anything that makes that guy look bad. But while I believe I was right to ask for Mike Stoops to be fired, I was wrong to ask for Josh Heupel to be fired because it wasn't the system. Because Josh Heupel's an air raid guy who wasn't running air raid, and then Lincoln Riley gets hired on as an air raid coach, and that ended up being the right move because Lincoln Riley is the best play caller in America and turned out to be one of the best head coaches in America. So we failed up in this position is what I'm saying. So there were a bunch of people, myself included, who wanted to see Heupel gone, and we ended up being right about that because Lincoln Riley's the guy. So I don't know that you can ding Bob Stoops for firing Josh Heupel because he got Lincoln Riley. I can only say that Josh Heupel is right to be upset and or angry, and if they really have it spoken, they probably should. That's not just Bob's offensive coordinator after all. It is the guy who helped him win the only national championship he won as a head coach, and that is something to always be grateful for. If not, have a conversation about what went wrong, what went right, and if they're the beer drinking kind, maybe they'll tap one together, and we'll hear about that later down the line. Until then, I hope Josh Heupel continues to set the world on fire at Central Florida. It's always nice to see guys that came up at Oklahoma as coaches or players do great things once they leave the university. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.